We all search for that spark which fuels our desire to fully engage in our lives. We look for the courage to experience moments where we can come alive instead of watching life pass us by. You're listening to the Front Row Factor, leaving fear and insecurity behind by exploring stories of top performers that are living life in the front row. Get ready to stand up, step up, and live it up with your host, Jon Vroman.
Front Row family, Jon Vroman here. Welcome back to another episode of the Front Row Factor podcast. Today, I'm talking with one of my best buddies in the world, Mr. Jon Berghoff of the Flourishing Leadership Institute. In this show, we get into all sorts of fun stuff. We talk about the speaker trainer experience that we have coming up in March. We're talking about the Best Year Ever Blueprint event that was hosted by Hal Elrod and Jon Berghoff. It was in California this past December. 330 people came from 13 different countries. We talk about that event, and we talk about all sorts of fun stuff. But I know you're going to dig this show. Before we get into it, let me just tell you a couple of my favorite Johnny stories. So, number one, when the charity was getting started, Front Row Foundation, that is, back in 2005, we held this fundraiser at a fire hall in Sicklerville, New Jersey. And we had 200 of our friends show up, and Jon was one of the people in the room. He walks up to me during that event, and he hands me a check for $8,888.88. Now, that was a significant amount of money at that time, and that's a significant amount of money now. But I will tell you, it was the gesture was beyond the dollar amount. It was a statement that said, I believe in this cause, and I'm willing to put my money where my heart is. And what's been great is that while I thought that might have been the greatest moment of the Jon Berghoff story of handing me this big check, it was only the very beginning. And over the next 10 years, the past 10 years, Jon would go on to serve as a board member. He would be a volunteer and host recipients on their experiences. He would come up with some of our best fundraising programs. He would have the most brilliant ideas of how we can serve people and create these incredible experiences. I would venture to say at the core, at the root of some of our best ideas, Jon Berghoff is right there as one of the sounding boards or the creators or the person who was the spark behind that idea. I will also tell you, here's a guy who once ran 330 miles in 10 days. He was averaging an ultra marathon a day for 10 days when he ran from basically DC to Cleveland to give a speech to this entrepreneurs organization, and which I was privileged enough to introduce him. I was also honored to be part of that journey, and I got a chance to witness Jon's extreme dedication and commitment and his ability to dig deep and to overcome obstacles and adversity. This is just one incredible dude. Now, by the way, those are just two of what are probably 100 stories that are like that I could tell you about this incredible guy. But I'm going to get right into the show. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy my conversation with Mr. Jon Berghoff. All right, Jonny B in the house. What's up, Mr. Berghoff?
Hey, Johnny. How you doing, man?
So, dude, here it is. It's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You and I both have a packed schedule, but we said we're going to do this show and we're going to make it happen right now. And I'm super excited, man, that we're going to talk because selfishly, I'm so pumped to hear about what's going on in your world. Dude, I want to talk about Best Year Ever. I want to talk about Flourishing Leadership Institute. And I want to talk about the speaker trainer experience. But before we get into all that, dude, I just want to take a moment to tell the Front Row community, for those who don't know Jon, which is probably very few people, because anybody at Best Year Ever, anybody that's connected to the charity knows your name and knows your impact. Since day one of Front Row Foundation, this is over a decade ago, you have been instrumental in building the charity. You've been on the board. You have been a coordinator of recipient events. You've been a top donor. You have been a leader, a mover, a shaker in the Front Row world. Dude, so many reasons I love you. For those of you who don't know, Jonny B is one of my best friends in the world. I was the officiant for his wedding. He met his wife in my house in the basement at a party. So, dude, I take credit for all the happiness in your life. I just want you to know secretly that's the deal. But ladies and gentlemen, I give you none other than Mr. Jon Berghoff. What's up, Jonny?
Hey, thanks, Johnny. It's great, man. Gosh, we're connected in so many great ways.
There we are. It's a good thing. I'm going to see you in a couple weeks. I'm going to be hanging at your house. I'm going to be playing with your kids, and I'm just so excited to be close to you, man. I love when we're together. We get these trail runs in. We get some great brainstorming, some thinking. We always eat some good food, and life is good. So, dude, Johnny, tell us the highlight reel. And I want to know this too, man. I'm so excited to know what's going down. Dude, I've been getting text messages from you. There's all sorts of good stuff, but highlights, buddy, go.
Yeah, wow. Where to start, man? There's a lot of good happening over here in our world. I would say that here's the simple answer. The simple answer is there's a lot of opportunities that have come into our world to make a really big impact. Many opportunities that by themselves are going to make a big impact with organizations and community groups. And, I'm thinking about through the leadership work we do at our institute, we run these big, large summits, and it's amazing to see kind of a flood of opportunities and realizing the flood's not going to end. And so we have to figure out how to deliver on it. And between that and some of these coaching groups that are just a privilege to serve high-level entrepreneurs and all of that. And then I go home and I do my real job, which is to be a dad and a husband, which is it's another world that's a lot of fun. It's continuously growing and exciting. So, dude, that's where it starts, man.
Father of 3, which the youngest is not sleeping very well right now. Oh, man. Do your text message to me about how often he's up and what you guys are actually trying to do to fix this is fascinating.
It's great.
Johnny, talk to us a little bit about appreciative inquiry. And, there's so many different places, you're right, that we can go. And I want to dig into all of it if possible, but I'm curious about the appreciative inquiry, maybe an overview of what it is, how you got involved, and what you're attempting to do with that right now, because it's a big part of your world.
Sure. Well, appreciative inquiry it is both a formal method for facilitating change across large groups, even entire systems of people. It's also a philosophy, and it was really founded about 30 years ago by one of our 3 partners in our institute, David Cooperrider. And it's a concept, appreciative inquiry, that has been used globally to serve organizations, nations, regions, community groups to lead big change. And it's founded on a few simple principles. And one of the things that I love about it is it's founded on these fundamental principles that, once people hear and understand what it is, they realize like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. But these are principles that help us as individuals too. It's based on these 2 words, appreciative inquiry. One of them is the power of positivity. And there's really a whole field of science and research that has shown us, and real world examples that have shown us, that when we have methods or tools to put us in a state of positivity, and we can talk about what that really means, because it's not just, hey, do we feel good? That's just one small piece of it. That when we're in that state or frame of mind, humans move towards the visions that they hold for themselves of the future. And so, one example of what does it mean to think positively? Well, it's the difference between saying, what's broken in my life and how do I fix it, versus whatever that area is, what would it look like to be exceptional? So just choosing a different question, inquiry, which just means to study or research, and using questions is the fastest way to do that. We start to change our frame of mind. And when we come from this positive place, either as individuals or collectively as entire organizations, amazing, amazing things happen. So I'm excited because we're being asked by some incredible entities to come in and lead large-scale change. And in some ways, it's very, very humbling to be told, hey, or to be asked to come in and lead hundreds and hundreds of really intelligent, high-performing leaders in creating their own future. But it's all grounded in principles that are undeniably based on truth of how do we create the very best for ourselves.
Johnny, how did you stumble upon this? How did appreciative inquiry find its way into your world?
Most of your listeners know I spent a number of years at the Vitamix Corporation overseeing their direct sales team. And it's kind of serendipitous how it happened. within a few days after starting at Vitamix, I got this invitation to come to a meeting being run at Vitamix by this guy named David Cooperrider. And I remember at first I felt really special. I'm like, wow, this must mean I'm important, right? And I go in the room and we have everyone from our executives to factory line workers to folks from customer service and accounting. I'm thinking, oh, this is interesting, because part of the belief is that wholeness is what creates life within a system. And you have to have representation. You have to have diversity of thinking. Traditional way that companies would plan is maybe a few people sit in a room and say, here's what we're going to do. And then they disseminate their plans. But what David's method has been doing for 30 years is it's been bringing as many stakeholders into the room as possible. And it's a really inclusive, diverse way of coming up with a plan. And so I'll never forget sitting through this one-day meeting where we were preparing to put the whole company through this big summit where you have the whole company in a room putting together their plans for the future. And I thought, this is fascinating. And so I started using Appreciative Inquiry in how I led all of our management team meetings. Interesting thing is, our management team that I was leading using this method, after years of doing this, I never used the words Appreciative Inquiry. They didn't even know what we were doing, but it was the meetings were always inclusive. They were always focused on coming from a place of strength. And we were always driven by these positive images of the future. And we would work together as teams to create solutions and get feedback from each other. And we had a great run. We had a great experience. And all during that time, I just remember thinking, man, this whole method and my experience at Vitamix, how could I help more organizations around the world to have this kind of positive experience? And so, there's other parts of the story, but that eventually led to having a partnership with David, who created this, because he became one of my professors and then a mentor, and now we get to work together. And so that's the short version of how it got here.
That's pretty cool. It's been really fun having a front row seat to the journey. But it would be, even having watched this whole thing go down, it would be difficult for me to tell that story because there's so many moving parts to it. But I think what's really interesting for somebody listening in right now is that sometimes we look at somebody's current place in life and we wonder how they got there. And what I've witnessed, Jon, about your life is that it's been a constant and never-ending focus on growth, learning, connecting with fascinating people, and then experimenting with these ideas and playing them out. One of the things that comes to mind, and I'm going to switch gears here a little bit because I see how you do this in your day-to-day life. I see how you do this with your friends and how you collaborate and how so much works in harmony. And in other words, you do like an appreciative inquiry almost every day in all things that you do. It's an appreciative inquiry. Every conversation, every text message, it's a giant collaborative effort, an orchestra of voices and strengths and ideas. I think you're absolutely brilliant in bringing strengths together and having a system work together. You did this exceptionally well at Best Year Ever. Can you tell, for anybody who doesn't know about Best Year Ever, is listening and is exposed to this for the first time, what was Best Year Ever and how did that come to be?
Yeah, well, one of our mutual friends, a dear friend of ours, Hal Elrod, a few years ago began putting on this event. And some of your listeners, I'm sure, were at the event. And this last year was the second time that we've run this. And originally, the event was designed as to help people put together a plan to have the best year of their life. And, inspired by Hal's mantra that really it's not about what we do or putting together the plan. It's about who we become. The event has evolved into something really interesting where we really have designed it to be very experiential and to create a lot of connection very intentionally between the participants. And what we've been noticing and seeing is that when it's more about what people learn from each other and what they learn through experiences with each other, shared experiences are so profoundly positive. We're starting to see that has an impact that cannot be created simply through just us speaking from the stage. Not that there's not a role for that, but there's something magical that happens when you also combine in an experience and this shared purpose of, hey, 330 people are all here, and we're going to facilitate a meeting where you're going to help each other, you're going to learn from each other, and you're going to support each other. And it's been really exciting. We're just actually just a few minutes ago, I just signed the contract for the hotel for this year. And should we announce it here?
Yeah, do it. Go.
So this year, I should make sure it's like been signed on the other side, right? This year, so this event has been growing. And I want to acknowledge that it's not growing because we have some sophisticated marketing engine. In fact, let me just pull back the curtain and say, we have not enlisted a single affiliate. We have not paid for an ad anywhere. We didn't run webinars. Not to say we didn't talk about it wherever we could, but there was not a sophisticated marketing. You want to know what our marketing plan was? Run such an amazing event that not only do people come back, but they tell their friends. So it grew from 200 people to we sold it out at 330. We sold it out like 6 weeks early. So this year we had to find a space in San Diego where we could hold more, and it's capped at 450 spaces at this hotel or the room we're in. And I think we might sell it out really quickly as soon as we open up the site to buy tickets. But this year, drumroll please, it is being hosted at the Manchester Grand Hyatt. And not only is it at the Grand Hyatt, which is just a stunning hotel, all throughout the hotel, just beautiful views of the San Diego Bay. I don't even know what it's called, the bay, the harbor, I don't know, boats, buildings. It's beautiful there. And every view in San Diego is great. And the meeting room itself, Johnny, I don't know, I can't remember if we've talked about this. The meeting room itself, the foyer, when you step out of the room, there's an outdoor balcony that literally holds hundreds of people that looks out over the water. And I remember our site visit when we're there to inspect the site, check it out, negotiate, whatever. I remember standing on the balcony, and Hal and I and the sales guy, we stood there and we just stared at the view. And we're like, oh, we could just stand here and stare for a long time. But it's going to be at the Grand Hyatt. It's going to be exciting. So we can't wait to have everyone back there this year.
So Johnny, it was so much fun watching you on stage, just in your element. You're a world-class trainer. You're a world-class presenter. You've proven that in a variety of industries. So you were a top performer in a direct sales company that we both worked with. You did that through the Vitamix Corporation and another. And so it seems like, and it's kind of rumor amongst our friends, that whatever you touch turns to gold, dude. It's fun to watch you in your element. So here's what I want to know. For everybody listening and watching, and they're seeing you in this space of your life right now where you're leading these big events of 330 people. Can you take us back a little bit? I want to go to a time in your life when you were forming this identity, when you were creating this persona, this person, you were evolving into a person that was leading hundreds of people. And what I'm getting to is your back row to front row story. And we don't have to spend a lot of time here, but I want to go back to a little bit of a humanness of yourself, which is when you weren't so gosh darn perfect, or so it appears, to everybody else. And can you get us to a story there?
I mean, can we tell people I was late for this podcast interview and I slept in today till 9 a.m.? It's all true. I've always been inspired by the idea that there was a possibility, right? Like I don't know if I've always had certainty. I have a lot more certainty now, but I think back 15, 16 years ago, I've always felt like, I think that I potentially could make a huge impact in the world. And I can remember when I was 17 being at a seminar saying that. And by the way, that was at a time in my life where I was a train wreck. And
now, hold on. Let's pause there for a second, though. You're at 17. You're in a seminar.
Yeah.
So I also want to point out that you were investing in yourself at a very young age, which I think is just great. So anyway.
Yeah. And that was just fortuitous. I had mentors that had pointed me in this direction. And by the way, I was not this virtuous kid where it's like, yeah, I'm going to go change the world. So I'm going to go to, no, it was like, how can I have more money and buy a nicer car and chase more girls? That's where I was at 17, right?
Seems reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah. My wife would say, those things haven't changed, but, it's like there's always been a part. This is something I probably have never talked about, but there's always been a part of me that was like, I feel like I could be destined to do something great. And there's always another voice that I encourage to chime in that says, that's going to be up to you, right? Like, it's not like you can do it. It's not this divine intervention. It's not something that's going to happen to me. I'm going to happen to the world. And I've always had these kind of competing feelings of like, well, I know I can make a big, and I bet your listeners, some of them could probably relate to this, where they have this tension of, I'm going to make a huge impact, or I know I can do it, but maybe it's not yet happening, right? And Jeff Latham, one of our Quantum Leap members, he put on Facebook the other day just a post that said, like, how has faith helped you in your life? And I'm a lurker. I didn't actually answer, but I loved thinking about his question. And I thought about it. I thought, I've always had faith that if I continued to seek the truth around what is it that really allows humans to flourish, what is it that really allows, in whatever environment I was in, what is it that allows salespeople to flourish? How do I allow my leadership team to flourish? And wherever I'm at, how do I bring the best to this? Having kind of a faith combined with an intense, legitimate curiosity. I say legitimate curiosity because I see this sometimes, and I gotta be careful how I say this. I see this with folks who they want to help the world. I know there's intentions that are great. And as soon as they say, okay, here's how to be great in your life, then all their energy goes into how do I market this? I'm like the opposite. I don't have a freaking website. You can't find me on the internet. I don't have a business card, right? People they're like, you can't find anything about me. It's because I'm like so far in this. I'm just so fired up about learning about how to make an impact through whatever that vehicle is at the present moment in my life. And that has led me to positive places. And I think I'm trying to allow what is true to flow through me. And here's the thing I'm trying to say is I've had a tension for a long time where I've always felt like I've been capable of making more of a difference than I was. And I've realized I have to be patient. And I have to recognize that if I choose to, I can make it so that whatever I'm doing right now, regardless of whether I think it's as big of an impact I can make or if it's not as big of an impact as I should be making, this is the perfect place because there's something that's happening right now that I may not realize why or how, but one day in my life, that moment 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I was learning something that eventually it's all going to come together like a symphony. And I might not know when or how it's going to happen. And there will be a tipping point where it's not going to be a question of, can I make a huge impact? It's going to be choosing between all the ways to make a huge impact. And, that's where I'm at. But I've had to have this patience and battle with this little voice that says, and some of it's doubt too. It's like, you're too young. You're not mature enough to really make that kind of impact. But just having patience and faith and staying curious about what's true, about how to really create positive change. That's been kind of what's always been there, even when I was, a train wreck. So I don't know if any of that makes sense.
It totally makes sense, man. I love it. Where does the confidence come from, Jonny? Because I've always admired your confidence. And it's I think it's been a positive influence for me. I've enjoyed having been in the front row of your life so many times that I feel like I've gained a little bit of that confidence in my own world. I can see how it's helped. So where does that come from?
Yeah, there has to be a long period of time where it was artificially manufactured, right? And whether that's good or bad, we get put in positions, whether we put ourselves there or whatever, where we might think, gosh, I don't really know what to do here. I don't have the answer. And I think what I've eventually become really comfortable with is having the answer is less and less important to me. And what's more and more important to me is, what are the values that I believe in? And if I know that, like, that's the ultimate success. The ultimate success is not having the answers. The ultimate success is being driven by values that I know in the long run are going to create positive outcomes for others and for myself. So that confidence, eventually it's like, look, I don't have the answer, but if I know I'm driven by certain principles and values around serving others and aligning strengths and listening and being present and always asking, how can I serve this moment or the people or the system in front of me as great as possible? And, being driven by these values gives me more and more confidence, even in moments like when we're running large events. I mean, there's often times where here's something nobody knows, best year ever event. So first day, Friday, was Entrepreneur Day, like 150 people there. Second day, an extra 160 show up. Contrary to what people might think, I don't craft out how the day is going to start. Like, I don't have this rehearsed thing, right? So, my original thought of how we were going to start the day, I don't even remember what it was. But as Hal is introducing me, I'm sitting there and I don't know how I'm going to start it off. But I remember asking myself, what are the principles that I believe in? And what I believe in is, if there's ever a way to have an audience say something instead of myself, that's more powerful. So I walk up on stage and I said, we had a great day yesterday. Is there anyone here in the audience who was there who's willing to share what was your experience? And I hand the microphone over. And you think about it, I mean, I saw some of our leadership team, like, is he drunk? Like, you can't start an event and hand the microphone to the audience. But it was driven by principles and values, and it led to 4 or 5 people sharing these incredibly profound shares in front of the room, which gave everything more credibility. It created a connectedness. But that's based on spending years of studying in my domain. Everyone has their own domain, their own area. Like, what is it that creates the greatest outcome? And in a large group setting, connectivity is created the more and more they are sharing with and for each other versus just me. And I thought, how can I symbolize that more than any other way? Well, how about hand the mic over at the start of the event instead of me rambling on? So that's just an example where I didn't have a solution, but I had the principles that I spent years studying and being curious about learning. And so, then I knew how to put it into play by going back to those principles.
Now, this you couldn't have teed this transition up any better, Jonny, because I was hoping that we were going to figure out some way to talk about the webinar that we are hosting on February 12th at 3 p.m. And I was thinking, how can I get Jonny to talk about speaking and presenting and engaging an audience? So, dude, that's a perfect transition here. One of the things, and I'm also going to make an observation, that in your quest to make a difference in the world, in your quest to operate out of your values and your principles, I've seen you explore the appreciative inquiry. I've seen you then ask questions about, well, if this is going to be something that impacts the world, in a huge way, there have to be other people involved in this mission. And so if we want to help people to lead others, if we want to help people to share their message with conviction, to communicate ideas, to engage audiences, which I know that you and I both believe, and I've heard these words come out of your mouth, is that, one of your purposes in life is really to, I remember we were at the Crop in Cleveland, and we're having a dinner, and I was talking to you about, like, hey man, what's it come down to, like the core principle of your purpose? And you're like, I think it's to learn and teach, to learn something and to teach it. And then the 10xing of that is, how do we help other people to do the same, to learn and then teach themselves? And if we can start impacting at that level, that feels really good. And, at this point, you and I have a lot of people that come to us and ask questions about, like, hey, Jon Vroman, you've been now professionally speaking for 6 years. How the heck do I get into that? And I got so many of those requests that I started to think about, well, how could I help them get into that business? And you being, the trainer at Vitamix, by the way, your division grew from like 75 to 175 million?
Yeah, 40 to 175, yeah.
Yeah, 40 to 175. And you started getting a lot of those questions. And we started asking ourselves, well, hey, as great buddies here, how can we hang out and help other people at the same time?
Exactly.
All this leads us to the speaker trainer experience that we're having in March. And then we want to ask ourselves, well, how can we give people a sampling of that? So, dude, talk for a moment about, why you're excited about the speaker trainer experience, what's in store, and what's going on with this webinar, and how did we end up here?
Yeah. Great questions. We'll come up with some answers right now. So the speaker trainer experience in March, it's going to be awesome. The hotel, everything about it is going to be amazing. It's in San Diego. And it's funny, I was just on a phone call with a couple of our Quantum Leap coaching members this morning, Matt and Mike McCarthy, who from the GoBundance group, which is an awesome, it's an awesome program, that everyone here should go check out. And we were, they were asking me, because they got an event next week. They're like, hey, give us some guidance on group facilitation. And it's funny because I just start dumping all this guidance, all these thoughts, and they appreciated it. But what it reminded me of when I got off the phone was that there's so much to learn about helping people from the position of being the person on the stage, either as a speaker or a facilitator. And that's one of the areas where for 17 years, I have been so fanatically curious about. I mean, I've gone to extreme lengths to learn everything I could. And I don't consider myself a great keynote speaker. Like, people ask me to give a keynote speech, I tell them to hire you, right? Like your ability to story tell and resonate through the types of stories that you tell is just beautiful. And that's being able to storytell is one of the things that we teach, obviously. We kind of dissect the fundamentals of brilliant storytelling, and we have people practice it at this event. But I've always been interested in this stuff. And so, yeah, this event, the Speaker Trainer Experience, we talk about how do you enter the audience's world. And we taught this at the last one, and we're going to really evolve and enhance how we teach it at this one. We talk about storytelling. How do you actually map out content? How do you organize your thoughts in a way that aligns with how the brain works? We often go to a method that doesn't align with how the brain really works. And then how do you use intentional rehearsal to capture what we know about neuroscience so that how do you really prepare the right way? Because there's some subtleties. And then at this event, we do teach some of the fundamentals of facilitating large groups. So the webinar, we're just going to give away some nuggets on this and give whatever value we can and introduce people to the Speaker Trainer Experience that we'll have in March. It's going to be great.
And this is our second time doing it. The first one we offered up because we had a lot of interest and requests for it, which we sold out pretty quickly, which was in Cleveland. And this one we're moving to San Diego. And
do we even have seats left? We're sitting here talking about it.
I mean, if it's not sold out, it's really close. So yeah, it's a good. I'm really glad you brought that up. But
yeah, and that's not like, I know that sounds like a marketing gimmick, but we have a limited space, and I think we're pretty close to the numbers. So
we are pretty close to that.
It's going to be fun.
So I think that if you're, hey, listen, come join us on the webinar and take a listen. And first of all, we want to create this webinar so that when you walk away, you have tremendous value just from that experience. And if playing live with us at some point down the road, even if this event is sold out, we'll likely open it up again in the fall, perhaps. And we'd love to.
How do they register for the webinar? Do we give that?
Speakertrainerexperience.com, and they can sign up right there. Speakertrainerexperience.com. But if for some reason you have trouble getting any of that info, just email me direct, Jon, Jon, at frontrowglobal.com, and we'll get you all set up. So I'm excited, man. It's going to be great. Jonny, when you look back on the last Speaker Trainer Experience we did, what was a highlight moment for you? What do you recall as one of the great moments of that event?
So there were a few great moments. One of them could have been when Juliana was leading the group in a mindfulness session. And it's so great. And,
that was great.
And she wanted to create the experience of being like shocked and then seeing how quickly you could get back into a mindful state. So if you can imagine this, imagine 30 people like totally zoned in, meditating, and Juliana, this like world-class meditation teacher, in the middle of like silence, she just screams into the microphone and the whole place just poops themselves. And then she goes, and go right back into breathing. All right, so that was kind of a highlight. Actually, one highlight was seeing Scott Groves, one of our participants, at the end of the event. I'm a big fan of, at any moment, any event, anywhere, is allowing spontaneity to emerge by being present to what serves the moment. And I don't know how this happened. We just felt like, we were watching Scott, and it was like, we should have him give his presentation to the whole group as like a way of closing out the event. And I remember watching Scott in this little 5-7 minute thing, and he just crushed it. And he had a topic that was like, it was something around how he made his career choice, but it wasn't a topic that was naturally lent itself to being inspiring. But I remember watching 30 people being riveted. And I remember him exemplifying everything we had just taught. And I think he was already skilled in these areas, but he was exemplifying storytelling and the fundamentals of how do you start a story in a way that's like a slingshot that propels people to the end of the story, and how do you capture people in a way that even if it's indescribable, they're going to remember and feel. And he did that with 30 strangers, and that was a highlight for me. I think another highlight was that you asked for one, and I'm on like number 3 by now. What was the highlight?
That's good. Keep going, man.
Another highlight was when I was talking and I see everyone start laughing, and I realize you've got the clicker and you're like going back and forth with a picture on the screen of something really goofy. And then whenever I turn around and look, you'd flip it back to the PowerPoint.
You know what I remember, Jonny? I remember just having a blast.
Yeah.
I remember there being this amazing group of people, and I remember watching and co-creating with you you in throughout the event. We had many experiences there where the content, as you explained at Best Year Ever, was being created on the spot. I mean, we went in with an agenda, a workbook, but we also knew, and you so brilliantly say, what serves this group the most in this moment, and being both disciplined enough to stick on time perhaps, or to follow an agenda, but adaptable and flexible enough to be able to say there's something else that serves even more right now in this moment. So I think it's co-creating. I think it was watching people have breakthroughs. It was moments where Nick, our cameraman, was capturing people's feedback about the event. And, as a speaker, whenever I jump off stage, my favorite moment, I like being on stage and connecting with the big crowd, but I love when somebody comes up to me at the end and it just can't hold themselves back from giving me a hug and saying, my life will never be the same. It's the immediate feedback. It's the human connection. It's when somebody says, this mattered to me, that to me is like one of my favorite parts. So watching somebody say, and I think is one of our, they said, I've been to several speaker trainer events and this one by far was the best. It's not about beating others. It's about creating an energy in somebody that you feel you've helped them propel their mission forward, or, to amplify the greatness that's already within them. Those are my favorite moments.
When you talk about the video, two things. One, Nick Conadera, our filmmaker, he's so brilliant at what he does. He does a great job capturing the essence. It's at the website, speakertrainerexperience.com. Go check out our promotional video. The funny story about that video. So during that event, and this isn't I'm not proud of this, but it's just an interesting observation and an example of, something that I struggled with during that event is and this is out of character for me, I did not manage my health very well. I think I forgot to drink water, right?
You did. I remember
Dude,
that.
I was so dehydrated. And I think about that. And it's because when I see the promotional video, I look at myself in the promo video, I think I'm about to collapse during the shoot. I look like I want to fight somebody. And I'm like, this is not right. So I think we have.
I think you're being critical, man. I think you were doing great. But I remember that. I got to the end of the day. You're like, I think I just forgot to drink water all day long, the entire day. Don't worry, dude. We're gonna have a whole team committed to hydrating you at the next event. You're gonna be well taken care of.
So, Johnny, we got 3 minutes left. How do we finish with a bang?
Yeah. So, dude, I'm so glad you asked that, because here's how we're wrapping up these days. So a couple of questions, and then let me start with this. Johnny, what does living a front row life mean to you?
I think it's continuously figuring out and exemplifying whatever it takes to allow those around me and whatever I'm doing and myself to most fully come alive. It's figuring out, how do I create an environment where what I'm touching, who I'm impacting, whether it's my family or my work, where we're most fully coming alive and enjoying, getting the most out of what we're doing in our lives.
What's one thing that listeners should do in the next 24 hours to be fully alive?
Go find a piece of nature if you can, and just be by yourself and unplug and spend a few minutes or a few hours and just allow silence. Allow a chance to think. That'd be it.
All right, Johnny, here's what we're going to call the 10 in 1. And here's what it is.
All right.
You get one word or one sentence only to answer the following questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
One word or one sentence. Gut reaction.
All right.
What's your favorite meal of the day, and what's typically on the menu?
Ooh, breakfast. And I do this almond vegetable protein milk. That sounds terrible, but it tastes great. Almond vegetable protein milk infused with a little bit of cold pressed coffee. And that's the milk I use for the cereal. And it's some sprouted grains. That's these days, breakfast. That's it.
Holy cow. I'm excited to be at your place next week, man. Which your favorite, books or documentaries?
Books.
I already knew that. What's one... That was for the audience. That was a setup for the audience. All right. What's one book that should be mandatory for all people to read?
Ooh, Conscious Business.
Conscious Business.
Yeah.
What problem do you... And we may have already answered this, so this might be a layup too. What problem do you most want to solve in the world?
How people work together.
Who are you a raving fan of? or one person that comes to mind? I know you have many.
My daughter, Sierra. She's 4. She's awesome.
She is awesome. Where's the next place that you most want to travel?
Home.
What are you feeling grateful for right now?
The lunch that I'm going to eat.
All right, I'm going to add this question in. What's for lunch?
A salad made with locally grown greens and fresh caught Idaho trout. And it's grilled and prepared 30 feet below my office in a wonderful restaurant.
So good. Jonny, what is something that you are proud of right now? Just something that comes to mind that you're proud of.
I'm proud of who I am as a parent.
All right, final question. What live event or performance do you most want to see in the front row? And it has to be something that you can go see in the front row.
Oh, see, it's our, it would be the best year ever blueprint in December in San Diego.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Jonny, any final quick thoughts here for the front row community, man? As a front row, you are front row, brother. I mean, dude, from day one, you've helped build this entire front row community. Any thoughts for your family out there?
I just want to say I'm so thrilled that you are doing this podcast, Jonny. Not just because I get to be on it right now, but no, I in fact, on behalf of your community, I just want to tell you, keep doing this, man. Keep going, because I think the way that you're approaching not only your life and how you're teaching others and through these podcast interviews is awesome. So that's just what I want to finish with for your community. And I want to encourage your community, whoever's listening, if you're getting value from the Front Row Factor, share. Go out of your way to share. I hear people complain. I don't know if complain is the right word, but they bring up this issue of, I have people in my life and they don't think the way I do, and I got to think about who's in my community. Well, look, the first thing before you change who your friends or family are is introduce them to what's changing you. So if anyone's getting value from these, be aggressive about introducing this or anything that's helping you to the world.
Buddy, thank you so much for that. I also want to say, for anybody listening that wants more Jon Berghoff, because, Jonny, is there a website that you would point them to right now?
Nope.
It would be it would be that's one of the coolest things ever. Go to speakertrainerexperience.com and you can connect with Jon and I there. We'd love to have you
be friends on
Facebook. We'd love to have you join us for the webinar on February 12th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure to sign up for that. We'll send you all the details. It's going to be great. We're going to give it our best for this live webinar. I also want to say to you directly, Jonny, that I am so appreciative of you, and I've said this to so many people that I've lost count. But when I think about individuals in my life that I both love deeply because they feel like a brother to me, literally like family, that have influenced my life in a great way, that if I were to be on a deserted island and only select a few people to spend forever with, dude, I know that sounds a little romantic for brothers here, but I want to tell you that you are that person for me, man. You're highly influential in my life. You're highly important in my life. I'm so grateful that I know I get to tell you this all the time, but I get to tell everybody in the front row community how much I appreciate and love Jon Berghoff, and just how excited I am, man, for what you're doing in the world, what we're going to get to do in the world together on this journey, man. I'm pumped to see you next week. It's great. Thank you, buddy. I love you. Hugs to the family. That's it.
Love you, Jonny. Man, what a great way to finish this call. I'm going to go listen to that on repeat.
Wow. Jon Berghoff, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that show. Make sure to go to speakertrainerexperience.com. Sign up for the free webinar. We're going to give all sorts of strategies on how to deliver high-impact messages, a transformational type speech or presentation or event. We want to teach you and give you the skills on how to train and facilitate groups of all sizes, whether you're talking to 2 people or 2,000 people. We want to teach you how to inspire action and participation from everyone involved. We want to teach you how to architect stories to illustrate your message, to connect with your audience in an intimate and authentic way. And we just want to teach you how to take control of your speaking platform so that you can supercharge your impact in the world and the growth in your business. So whether you're listening to this and you're somebody that, by the way, is speaking professionally or want to speak professionally, if you are an employee but you train or speak or present in your line of work, this is for you. Go to speakertrainerexperience.com. Check it out. We're so excited. This event is, if it's not already sold out, it's pretty darn close by the time that you're listening to this. So if you're interested, check it out right away. It's in March in San Diego. It is it's going to be a great time. I can't wait to play with everybody out there. The lineup and the attendees, we've already got some great folks in the room. I hope you come join us. Anyway, that's it for now. Until next time, keep living your life in the front row. Talk to you soon, everybody. Bye-bye.
That's all for this episode of The Front Row Factor. To discover more simple and effective ways to lead a fearless front row life, visit frontrowfactor.com and subscribe to Jon's 4 Minutes in the Front Row, where he shares quick stories from real-life experiences. Thanks again for joining us today. We hope our show inspires you to live big, give big, and experience life to the fullest. See you next week on The Front Row Factor.